All right. It looks like we're live. I'll give it just a moment. Thank you, everybody, very, very much for being here. I'm Amir Satfat. I'm the founder and leader of ASGC, always supporting the games community. I really appreciate that my two friends, Justin Williams and Kira Stout, are here representing everybody on our Discord team who does so much to help the community. For those of you who may not know me or have never met me or haven't heard of the community, I'm very grateful that you took your time to be here. These are unprecedented and very, very sad and difficult times. And I know I've been looking through hundreds and thousands of messages since the beginning of the week. ASGC is a zero profit community that I started in Q4 of 2022. And it was started because of some of the challenges I had finding my way in games myself. And some people, when they go through hardship, are like, oh, I'm going to put others through that hardship. Others are like, I want to do something so no one has to go through what I went through in their position. And for me, my response was the latter. We started as a single resource, which was a jobs workbook. And over time, we built it up to over 50 resources, every one based upon suggestions from the community to attempt to help you. This is not my full-time job. Like Justin, like Kira, we all do it on top of things that we do in our day jobs in our life. It is just a passion project. Thank you, Keith. And so what am I going to do tonight, everybody? I have to accomplish basically two main things. One is that I want to take a relatively leisurely walkthrough of everything our community does, because I know even with the efforts of our amazing head of art and design, Desiree Rincon, and our mods and the whole team to help, it is a lot of content. And I think that I have found in support exercises that I do that we've done with over 200 teams, when I get on sessions like this, although we're doing 2 hours tonight for an hour with teams, and I walk through everything and allow for Q&A, I find it leads to a much better experience and people knowing what to get out of everything. So I will go into sharing my screen, walking through those resources, and then moving right into the Q&A. And please, don't think of this as a one-off thing. I'm so pleased so many have joined the Discord. We have sessions every week with chats with people. The mods are very accessible. I answer every single note I get on LinkedIn. The only thing that I ask of people in expectation setting is just two things. One, please know that because our community has 600,000 unique users every month across all our sites, I only split so many ways. So please know that if you ever reach out to me for individualized help, I will always respond, but I will probably politely point you to our mod team or our coaches unless it's something urgent. And the second thing is that when we get to the Q&A, I appreciate everyone keeping their questions relatively crisp and as generally applicable so others can learn from them too. Justin and Kira, would you like to just say a quick word of hello, and then I'll go right into sharing?
Kira.
My name is Kira, and I'm just here to hang out and help in any way I can. Obviously, with these really rough days, I'm with everyone out there looking. I know everyone's out there looking for jobs or needing help or whatever. I'm right there with you. So I'm just super excited as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Kara. And again, Justin here from the Discord team. Just really grateful to be supporting Amir and everyone out there looking for jobs right now, especially in this tough economy and tough situation that we just had. And just know that there are people out there who are willing to support their free time and just to help out everyone involved as a community. So thank you.
Thank you both so much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, everybody. And again, don't worry about having to take this down or anything. This is being recorded, and we'll make sure that everyone gets that, and I'll post out on it. All right. Can you see me all right on my share? Okay, good. So everybody, when I talk about ASGC, I always like to tell people that we have everything that we provide across basically 4 homes. One of those homes, which I'm going to cover very briefly, is if I show you LinkedIn, you'll see that I'm here. I always encourage people to throw follows if they like, although certainly you don't have to, only because I post very, very frequently here, often 3 to 4 times a day. And in addition to a lot of hopefully insights and interesting and fun content, much more important relevantly today is I give lots of updates on what's going on in the community. We also have a LinkedIn page that you can look up for ASGC itself. That's all I'll say on the LinkedIn. We're going to spend the bulk of our time today talking about the website at asgc.gg, beautifully illustrated with this Amir diver theme by Desiree, of course, officially sanctioned by the Mint Rocket team. I'm going to jump around a little bit and give you a sense of everything that there is for you to use here when you come on. Start your journey here. So all these pages have, backslash links to them. This is asgc.gg/start. If you go in here, we try to have lots of different things that get you to kind of a similar result. If you simply click through what you're looking for, what kind of support, and your experience level, this will feed out a number of suggestions of the resources our community has to get you started immediately and let you kind of click through. I want you to hire gamers. You don't really need to worry about for yourself today, but this is one of the many tools we have so you understand how we go in both directions. We built a network of over 40,000 hiring managers, recruiters, and other such personnel over 4 years. And I can tell you that in an average week, 3,000 to 4,000 people look at our hiring lists, and we give them lots of different cuts at that. This one, Project X, is one view that allows them to look at 10 people at a time, and we'll show you those other resources later. So I want you to know when I ask you to do some of these things, where it's going on the other end for the hiring managers. This is a video that just goes through our resources in 30 seconds in case you want to look at it after here. I always give very clear metrics on what our impact is, so there's no fugazi or me putting my hand in the air. I have other data that you'll see on the site. One thing I should mention here that's like a very big, larger thing is, in addition to the jobs help, I try to help everybody with insights and information. Because of the amount of trust that we built with hiring managers and recruiters, company teams, and the community itself, I believe that we objectively have more data on the games labor market than anybody else in the world. And this not only allows me to give good insights and data in the advice I provide to others, but it means that if you ever have questions about what's going on with different phenomena, I can give you hard data to try to answer those things. For example, I believe we have the most accurate projections on layoffs that I update every 2 weeks, but we have a lot more about, role turnover, jobs location, categorical data, everything you could imagine. Community thanks gives you a sense of just everybody who's involved in helping. In case you're wondering, what events we have, what partner organizations we have, that's a fun thing to browse through briefly. And I won't go through our mission statement, but you can see our values if you like. And finally, if after seeing this, you're like, well, I want to give back, we always have 17 ways that you can self-help to give back to the community. One last thing that I'll mention is I told you about, /start at asgc.gg/brochure and /guide respectively. You'll find a nice 2-page brochure in case, you forget everything that I said after this chat, that gives you, again, an overview of everything in the community. And also a guide that gives, again, a nice 2-page guide of things to do to get your search started and lists out every resource that we have in the community. Now, at the bottom, and there's a carousel with some nice images, again, that highlight some of the things we have. If you forget any of the links from me on LinkedIn, Discord, and I very, very seldom post on YouTube these days, maybe a few times a year, but it's there. The links are there in case you want to know where to go. Okay. We're going to spend most of our time on this site going through the 4 categories of resources and the resource library. Category 1 is for hiring visibility. So these are all the things that help you with being discovered and being hired. It's divided into 4 resources. The One Job Seekers Workbook is one of the oldest resources we have. People are constantly coming on and coming off this list. And you can see we feature over 9,300 job seekers. This is one of the most powerful tools we have. And again, as I mentioned, many people are looking at this every day, every week when they're looking for people to hire. They can filter by a common set of categories that I've come up with for who's in the community. Remote flexibility. I just recently added location filtering by country, continent, country, state, region, and city, and experience. For every person who's there, you can see there's a nice lean page that this is exactly what you personally fill out. So, whatever you put in is what comes out. It'll give information on what you've been doing, your LinkedIn pages, your portfolio, an about section, your experience, and so forth. You can edit your data. You can remove yourself if you were hired. And this is divided into 3 tabs. Full-time work is self-explanatory. Super help is for people who've been looking for 2 or more years. And if you're on full-time work and you've been on the list for 2+ years, it automatically moves you into super help. And short-term work, which is for freelance, consulting, and these types of things. And Project X, as I mentioned, I will now actually show you what that looks like. People can put in experience and so forth. And in this case, there were just 2 candidates. And let me go back here. Let me add a few more categories. And you can see this is another thing. This is, again, everything we do is because it's a request from somebody. Some hiring managers wanted kind of an easier view of seeing 10 candidates at a time that they could click into. So that's what we provided them. Gamesworks support posts. Now, this is interesting. So if your organization or studio has had a programmatic layoff of 3 or more people, I offer anybody a Gamesworks support post. What this is I profile anybody at the studio who is laid off, who wants to be featured, and I list them here so hiring managers and recruiters can look at them as well. You'll see, for example, we did 2 for Other Side. We did Player Unknown with Kim and team. We did 2 for Riot and so forth. I only do these posts for a variety of reasons to respect the studios if they want me to do it. So someone on your talent team needs to reach out to me. And if they do, all they have to do is fill out this template. We've, again, done it in over 140 situations, and I will get a Gamesworks support post up there. This helps a lot with visibility. And also, you can repost it every 3 months. Someone on the team just has to let me know. If your studio wants to know, well, why should we do this versus just posting it ourselves? It is true that anyone posting it once will get a lot of visibility. What you get doing it with ASGC is we have a lot of visibility, but also because it's on this list and we repost it, you will be on a permanent database that gets much larger visibility in the long term. Super help I explain. And then this is one of our newest resources, Amir Likes Me, which has been very popular. I've already done 418 of these. This is simply when you make a post looking for work, if you fill out the form, make sure that you have comments set not just to connections and anybody can comment. I will put a comment on your job seeking post to increase your visibility. We also have a template for how to write a good looking for work post. So let me show that later. And please use that if you're going to make a post like that. So that is category 1. Category 2 is our actual job listings. Now, I have put a lot of time into this, and you'll see as we go, on a lot of these resources, there's little green circles that have little supplementary resources and guides. Definitely don't skip these. As an example, this is something I wrote inspired by, many of you may have seen a well-known hit marker resource that listed all the jobs in games. I was like, this is cool, but I want to do something of a similar type, but something very different, which is I am finding that 60% plus of the people that our community is helping place are being placed in non-games jobs. I wouldn't be surprised if that number goes to 70% by the end of the year. This is why I've been beating a drum until it has a hole in it, that we need to put a lot of focus on non-games hiring. There are a bunch of resources we have on this, including a really cool entire guide called Project Reality that my friends Tim Wood and Audrey White and I developed, along with some excerpts from a great book by our friend Tyler Cushing, who was very gracious to let us do that. This is a one-page guide that simply says for any games function, let us give you some ideas of other things and other fields that you can do if you're from that background. This is even better defined in our roles. Now, if you ever have an individual role that you want to submit for the workbook, you can submit that right here. But this is now the actual job listing. So this is the most exhaustive listing of jobs in the world. I think what makes our resource interesting is I put together a list over the years, over 4 years, of 2 things. One is a list of over now 16,000 organizations and games, and I've set up appropriate crawling and cleaning for all of them. The second is I've developed a list of not just a dump of jobs, right? But a list of games adjacent jobs that, based on a lot of data work, I believe are most applicable to games people. This is why you will see we have games jobs and games adjacent jobs. Now, what's cool is, remember those same categories that you saw earlier? I have matched up those same categories against jobs here. So, accounting and finance, audio, and so forth. And so you can see, if you go to business development, jobs not only for games, but jobs for games adjacent as well that might be applicable for what you're doing. And I just need to do one more cleaning on the category. See, we're always improving stuff here. Then I have stuff like job type, experience, location, and so far as you'd expect. You can click on any role to see more info. Another thing that's cool is I track interest. So every time someone clicks in on a job or clicks on apply, you see it gets interest from P1, which is the lowest, to P10, which is the highest. Another interesting thing is 84% of these total jobs and 65% of the games jobs, not for any individual candidate, community-wide, have never been clicked on by anybody. So please try to just be more exhaustive in everything you take a look at. In addition to this, I genuinely try to be a one-stop shop for you. I've made a list of 114 games jobs boards that are all here. And I also have a list of individual job boards by people you may know, like Alex Rem, Chris Tran, Destin Bales, and so forth. Our ethos for the community is we're not here to compete with anybody. We are here to help people and to work with other people who are helping people to help people in games more. So if anyone has a resource, I will put it on here. And if anything anybody else is doing is high quality enough and is not something we're already doing, I will certainly consider it from the community. Although given we have so much, I try to be more selective these days. There is also a box here for my jobs, so you can build your own personal view of all the jobs that you're looking at, so you don't have to redo things every time you come in, and it's private to you and saved locally. We're also an official partner with my friend Gaurav Mathur, who has this amazing resource called Game Dev Map, if you haven't heard of it, which is you can click on any city and it will tell you all the games companies there. So a wonderful resource. So those are all our role listings, and we clean them and edit them very aggressively and all the time. The next resource is our career guidance. We have a set of coaching guidelines I send to every coach when they sign up. You can give feedback. But what is this? Let me come back to some of the buttons here in a second. This is a resource where over its lifetime, your fellow industry peers have given you over 100,000 coaching conversations and reviews. We divide this between mentors, CV and LinkedIn reviewers on website and Discord, mock interviewers, and portfolio reviewers on website and Discord. What this is I have fine-tuned this over the years. Based upon overwhelming feedback, we don't have like a tracking and logging system because it was just too much of a burden for people to do, and I can't compel people to do reviews for free. I also, again, don't do force matching because I can't make people do reviews for free. But we want it to be as transparent and open as possible. So all you do is you, again, go to the same functional categories. You can pick anybody you want in that category. The colors give you a sense of who's been viewed, clicked on, and overall exposure the most. So you can have a sense that if someone's getting a lot of exposure, well, maybe you can go to someone who's been a little bit quieter because maybe they'll be more likely to respond, just to give you a sense of that. You can correct the coach data, and you simply reach out to someone, say that you found them on ASGC and ask for a session. People, even with over 2,000 coaches, get a lot of inbound. So I always tell people to be a little bit patient. You might reach out to 4 to 5 people and get a response or two. But if you do a round or two of responses, you will get responses. And when I say the Discord, everything on the site is pretty simple. You reach out to someone, you get a response, you do a session. For the Discord reviews on CV, LinkedIn, and Portfolio, our team, led by the amazing Kira, who you met earlier, they have this organized in channels where you just, go into the channel and put in your stuff, and then people rove the channels and they review them. So these are both options that are available to you. You will see that we, again, have some guides. My friend, the amazing Sarah Thompson, who's at Epic, wrote a great guide on mentorships, which you can view. Alex Gombos, who's a legendary recruiter who was at Sony and is now at CDPR, wrote a guide on interviewing. I'll open some of these just so you can see them. I mean, all these things are good stuff. And Jasmine Coppin, who's just world-class art recruiter at Blizzard, she wrote a guide on portfolio reviews. So those are here. And you can see these badges. We give these beautiful Dave the Diver fan art badges that Desiree created to people for being part of our reviewer system as a thank you. And I'm amazed to say we've had 98% plus retention of coaches over the lifetime of the program, which is fantastic. Additional perks is other services that we provide. So one thing that's really cool is we have given away 4,327 free tickets to events. We can't do travel and we can't do hotels, but over 67 events, we've given those away. We're also an official community partner with GDC, Gamescom, Pocket Gamer, PAX, GamesBeat, and XP Gaming, and we are the largest pass recipient for all of these events. In fact, as an example at GDC, we sent 575 people to that event this year from GDC out of the 20,000 that were there. And you can also see by clicking through, we're super transparent about all the other events we did. For example, we just did Games for Change, BlizzCon and Mag West, and Game Business Live. If you want to go to an event and it's not on this list, with maybe the exception of DICE and the Game Awards, just because the passes are very expensive, we generally can sort it out and help people get passes to events. Always just follow my LinkedIn page, or you can refresh Ticket to Ride. If anything is live, you will see it here. LinkedIn Premium Trials is a cool system that is automated where if you have LinkedIn Premium, you can donate up to 10 LinkedIn trials in. And then anyone who wants can receive a LinkedIn trial for a free 2-month one if you've never had one before. This is a good opportunity to see if you think LinkedIn Premium will help you at all. You can message people. It allows you to see who's viewing your profile. So this is something the community asked for, and we've served over 1,000 of these free LinkedIn Premium trials. Ask Anything is my good friends Lex Parisi and Tim Wood, who have been in the industry a long time, and have a lot of backgrounds in coaching and mentoring. They are here as another kind of mailbag. So beyond, if it's not enough for you with all the coaches and all the mods and everybody, if you have a question you want to ask them to have answered in an anonymous environment, this is here for like an Ask Anything mailbag of literally anything you want to ask in a safe and anonymous way. And then finally, we have our Games Creator Partner Program. This is people who have over 2,500 followers, and I have verified have meaningful quality resources that they provide as part of their social media presence on LinkedIn to help people. And this isn't hand wavy, right? For each person, it is about having a specific list of the things they're doing. So for example, if we look at Greg Posner, I tie everybody here back to categories that are similar to our community: jobs, coaching, skills, resume, and networking, so you can see what they provide. This is to give you another list of people whom I think are really, really cool that you can consider and give a look to help you with all the things you're trying to do. And the last category is a very, very big one indeed, which is our resource library. In here, we have a lot of resources that fit well and aren't something that we felt should be in the front and group better to something here. So for example, you'll see a lot of guides, templates, and other resources like that. A quick start guide for your career. This one that I mentioned, which is very popular, is a guide based upon data over the life of the community of how to write a good job-seeking post, what to do, what not to do. We also have stuff like job search playbooks, resume templates, cover letter templates, job application tracker templates. We have list of scammers. We have a game course directory of free courses that has, almost 4,500 courses that you can take by all different topics and disciplines. Seth Sivak of Proletariat and Blizzard wrote a great guide to game startups for our community, which is really, really cool on what to do. We have a really great indie marketing guide. The wonderful people at Game Industry Coffee Chat, God bless them, made a really great survival guide and are just great partners of the community. Again, we just want everybody in the tent. We recently reworked from the bottoms up our support resource, which with the great kindness of Amanda Snyder-Cathy has her Riff Surfer, has a list of the first things to do if you've just lost your job, has over 157 resources of things across financial help, housing and homelessness, mental health, survivor support, and so forth. We have an entire early career resource pack for people who are early careers. You can see what a honking 69-page document this is. I mean, each of these things is massive in many cases. Tim Wood, who I mentioned, who's fabulous, fabulous recruiter, wrote an entire guide of his own on how to think on CV, LinkedIn, and portfolios, which again, if something is really good, I will occasionally post it, even if we have something that's similar to give you another take. We're a partner with Renee Gittins and an amazing game dev foundry, which has all kinds of resources for people wanting to build studios. Jess Lindell, formerly of Unity, gave us permanently forever free access to her career resources suite. Scott Millard gave us an entire guide on video game publishing. Tim Cullings has a list of events and jams. This resource that I mentioned, with a lot of great stuff from Tyler Cushing's book, and in collaboration with my friends Tim Wood and Audrey White, is an entire 40-page guide about how to think about non-games work for games people. Entry level, Babette and her team have great entry-level resources. Ayla, Derek, and Cave Bear have all kinds of stuff for volunteer studios. I mentioned Game Dev Map, and then these are further resources for work outside gaming, where my friend Julie and I put together a set of tabs that give you, again, ideas of jobs that you can have in different fields that are non-games. And finally, a game dev guide from my friends Anton and Mirko. So these are all the resources that we have on the site. I always tell people every resource, from the jobs workbook, which was the very first one, to everything you see here, came about because someone in the community told me, Amir, could you do something for X? And then I go back to my laboratory with the team and I see. What I always tell people is it can't be, again, duplicative too much to something we do. And second, you have to put yourself in my shoes of, I'm thinking of the numbers and scale. Like when we put up something like our jobs workbook, the jobs workbook sometimes can get over 10,000 people hitting it in a single day. So I have to think, is it something that can scale to everybody? But if you have an idea that does those things, I am always happy to talk about it. One other thing that I'll mention is our Discord server. I just want to share, many of you are in fact on the server right now listening to this talk. We have so much content and resources here, things that you can look through by specialized discussions for various functions, career development, our own sets of postings and volunteer opportunities here, and a lot more, like I mentioned, about portfolios and other reviews. So we're about to hit 20,000 people on the Discord server, and there's an enormous amount that you can look through there. So I really hope that this helps give everybody an overview of all the things that can help you as you're looking for your search, that are always free. And with that, I'm happy to move over and to take everybody's questions.
Got a lot of feedback on the Discord saying that was a lot of resources. Some people were saying they didn't realize that many resources. So we got a first question here from Discord saying my partner has been having issues with the profile not being saved. If they run into any tech issues, who can they contact for any assistance?
JJ, I am assuming that you are talking about are you talking about profile on the jobs? I'm going to assume that you're talking about profile on the job seekers workbook. Is that correct, JJ? You can answer that on the bottom. If that's true, I spend a lot of time working on the resources, but clearly sometimes I don't catch everything. So you can write me. In short, JJ, just write me and I'll sort you out. Anything that's on Discord, the mod team will help with you on. Anything that is a resource issue, you can ping me and I can be a help with that. Let's see. Aiden says, for the role listings, is there any way to filter out AI programming and training? So Aiden, I always have to balance what we can do at scale with what we can do in specificity. The categories that we have are kind of the categories we have because I've determined over a great deal of time that these are the most reasonable high-level categories to separate work. Beyond that, in the jobs workbook, you can absolutely type in terms like AI programming or AI training to filter them out. But I would say it becomes a Boolean search of what's in the job description and in the job title. Aldo, thank you very much for thinking it's so exhaustive. That's very kind of you. I require, Yari says, 24/7 nursing care to work remotely. From a recruiter's perspective, when's the best time to discuss accommodations? You know what? I said I wasn't going to do this, but I have Justin here. I will ask him that question. Justin, when is the best time to discuss accommodations?
From a recruiter's perspective, right? So what is it? Honestly, you talk about it during the screen. You making sure that when you apply, there's accommodation links and there's accommodation contact information. So you definitely bring it up at the very beginning.
Great. Scotty says, I've heard mixed opinions on templates. Does anyone have any knowledge experience on if they reduce your resume score? Scotty, I have spent a lot of time looking into this. There's no question that ATS systems are everywhere. I generally don't believe one should do an AI written resume. I think a template is a good starting point and individualizing it is great. There's definitely words and terms that ATS systems like. And what I would say is you will find a lot of that stuff in the guides, in the resource library. But beyond that, this is why we have those CV LinkedIn reviewers on the site and on the Discord to help with exactly things like that. Right. Thank you for confirming, JJ, that it was the job seekers workbook. Sorry that happened. It does happen from time to time. You ping me and we'll figure it out. Bhavya, where do you find the resources? As mentioned, the easiest way to do it is asgc.gg. If you go to that link, you will find the website and everything, including the LinkedIn and the Discord, are links at the bottom of that page. Daniel, one problem I found with non-game jobs is skills aren't always transferable. For example, as much as I know about Unity and C#, recruiters will prioritize candidates with directly relevant experience. It can sometimes feel like an uphill climb. Daniel, you're 100% right. I mean, look, man, none of this is easy. And what I tell people all the time is all of this stuff is a numbers game. I'm always just thinking about marginal differences and odds. And what I can say is a lot of fields have tough transfers to others. I see this a lot with conversations about game design. I see this a lot with colleagues and friends, of which I have many who are in writing and narrative. But I will say that as much as you can frame those skill fits and try it, it will give better odds over the long term. And I will again say, having those discussions with people in field and talent people in field, of which there's so many in our community, can give you a sense of what other people have been doing. One really interesting facet of pushing this so hard and encouraging people to try other fields, because I think it's important, is we're building up an awful lot of tribal knowledge of people in the community having tried to do those things and seeing what worked and didn't work that they can also share with one another. Aiden, you're very, very welcome. Nick says, are coaches and mentors the same thing or two separate roles? Nick, the roles that we have mentors who are giving general advice on career and other topics. We have CV LinkedIn reviewers who are helping you specifically review things like your resume and your LinkedIn profile. We have mock interviewers who are helping with interviews, and we have portfolio reviewers who are helping review portfolios of different types, art, design, engineering, and so forth. So I would say coaches broadly defines the umbrella of all the help. Mentoring is one of those pieces of help. Josue says, is it worth applying for a company that's not in the gaming market? I absolutely think it is. I mean, think about it this way. What I tell people is, and I'm not saying ours is perfect, but I try to make it as perfect as possible. We have 70,000 games and games adjacent roles that I track, right? Of those, 18,000 are in games. Of those 18,000, a third of them are in like big, well-known AAA studios. So let's say like 6,000. So what I always tell people is I think of all this stuff as concentric circles. I know this wasn't your direct question, but thank you for humoring me. If you're only applying to the big, well-known studios, you're now leaving out the 70% that's mid-size, ex-dev contractors and other things. If you're only applying to the games roles, you're leaving out 60, 70% of the overall opportunities that could be a potential fit for what you're doing. So I absolutely recommend it. I think it's a good thing in terms of numbers. I also think it's very, very helpful to just understand what stuff you're qualified for. If I go back to the good question that Daniel had above, figuring out that fit and how to present yourself for those non-games jobs takes a while. It's not an overnight thing. And I think you just have to do it a bunch from what I see with candidates to figure it out. Patrick, do you have recommended resources that can help job seekers with neurodivergence or other disabilities? Patrick, I believe we have a number of things like that in that support resource that I showed that had kind of the green colorization and themes. That is the place that it should lie. Please take a look at those resources. And if after going through it carefully, you tell me that there is nothing in there that is satisfactory for what you're looking for, this is another of those great examples of us filling in stuff that's not there. I will look around and find other resources to put them in there that are sufficient and meet the needs that you're looking for. Roger, I've recently started doing remote freelance work for international clients. What's the best way to leverage that experience to land a job at a company? At the end of the day, and Justin can give me a head nod if I'm off base because I don't think I am, any recruiter who hasn't had their head under a rock for the past 2 to 3 years, especially in our space, but in many others as well in tech, they understand what is going on right now. They understand how many cuts are. They understand how many people are looking for anything. There is a rough numbers game that is going to be hard no matter what, no sugarcoating it. But I think any effort that you can make to show work, to show progress, to show entrepreneurship, to show what impact you're having and the project you're doing for those clients, that is a great tagline and a presentation to put on your CV. My only 2 takes on it would be really clear in how you present it on your CV, what projects you're doing for those clients, what impact you have had, and test how the framing of that looks on the CV with some of, again, these coaching conversations and reviews so people think that it's presenting well and it resonates with folks. Jonas, I've never had a video games job. I'm about to head into college for graphic design. Should I focus more on networking, trying to find a job right now, or something else? My biggest advice, Jonas, is I would have the broadest aperture that you can have of finding any employment post-graduation. I would start with that being a mindset in terms of how you go in. And I'm not suggesting, forgive me, that this isn't your mindset already. But I would be like, you know what? I am in graphic design, but what other courses and things can I take to learn other skills? For example, Can I take a course in learning a little bit of how to read like financial statements or learning things like, modeling? Can I take a course in learning some general business concepts or other things? Are there other fields or other areas within the school that I can get an exposure to? I would ask a lot of questions from people at your career office or even people in ASGC of, what are some things that other people like me who've made transitions have done to get opportunities? So before I think about jobs or about networking, I would just try to understand what people like you have done to be professionally successful with their time in college and post graduation. Of the two things that you mentioned, though, I would indeed say that networking and meeting people and branding yourself are the most important things. I think having some type of presence for yourself, whether it's posting, being on social, finding things that are local, finding things that are online to just meet as many people as you can, that's a really winning recipe. I think you don't need to worry about job stuff just yet, but you can start spending some time looking at things like our jobs workbook to understand what kind of work and opportunities are out there before you get into applying. Mike, I found that attending networking events with folks in your non-gaming target industry can help you reframe your skill set. Mike, I always appreciate your support. And of course, you're right. Like, so much of this stuff that I talk about is just about learning more. I don't blame people in our industry. We all have experiences that frame what we know and what we've learned. Mine was a really journeyman experience, right? I worked in so many different fields before I got into games. And so my life has been being in other industries. I empathize deeply with people who have done nothing but their specific field in games for 15 to 20 years. And I think it simply takes a lot of time of reaching out to people in aerospace, in healthcare, in finance, in business to understand what roles are available. I can simply tell you again, there are no guarantees. And if you do that and within 3 months or 6 months or whatever, you don't find it, please don't think that it didn't work. I'm telling you, on average, it works better than not doing that. Ash, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday to you as well, my friend. Hump day. All right. On the flip side of Daniel's earlier question, I managed to make it into a non-games work for some much needed stability from AJ Bruce, but I'm looking to get back into games or games adjacent work. It's daunting for me and I'm hesitant because of my desire to support my family. Do you have any resources to help support families? AJ, I would again say to the extent that there are support resources, it's in that same resource that we talked about for neurodivergence. I would say, again, take a look at what is there. You let me know what's there because there's a lot of stuff. There's 140 things in there. If the form factor or the type of help that you mean when you saying support families is not in there, let's talk about it and we can find something that does help you.
1 second, Amir, missed this question right here.
Right. Thank you. Young Kang says, what would be considered as early and mid-career? Sometimes it's hard to pinpoint, especially when we work in third party. Young Kang, I will let Justin tell me what tell us what he thinks as well. My delineation is a very data scientist one. I define it for the purposes of data and the way I think about it for our community as early being anybody with less than 3 years of experience. And I think of mid-career as anybody for 3 years experience to 10 years experience. The reason I choose those breakpoints is, first of all, I think they're common ones that a lot of people use, but it's also because in the data, I observe very large population differences between people in those groups. For example, some of the stats that many of you have seen, which I know might seem frightening, but are not quite as bad as they look on the surface, about how, for example, you only have a 5% chance of finding a games role if you're early career. That is true. But that is for people who have literally no or very little experience in games. When they break out of that bracket into mid-career, I generally find the stats aren't nearly as daunting. So that's why I use those breakpoints. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty spot on. I of course, I'm going to give the SHRM, which is HR, answer. So mid is actually 3 to 5 years. standard. And then senior is anywhere between 6 to 10 plus. And then junior or early career will be that 0 to 3 mark. But yeah, you were pretty spot on with that. I think that when you mentioned third party, that you're comparing different industries. And so every industry might be different. Like a lawyer, like a law firm would consider a senior a different level versus a video game. So yeah.
Cool. Abraham says, I've actually started looking outside of programming entirely. I started looking into things like CAD, CNC just to get a job. How do I balance wanting to follow my passion and needing a job? I've been looking for any programming job for 4 years and I've had no luck. Abraham, the truth of the matter is, this is an extremely personal question. I mean, I can give advice, but I think that balancing act is something that the only people who can really decide are you, your family, or other key decision makers that you value in your life. If I think about my own life, for an example, the only thing that I ever wanted to do was to work in games. But I didn't do that passion until I was 38 years old, because for me, the most important thing was, yes, finding a job, but was also other priorities like being proximate to my family. And so there were opportunities to go to the West Coast, to go to the Pacific Northwest and so forth, but I didn't do it for those reasons. As a dad of 3 and as someone who's the kid of immigrants who came here with nothing, I've always been much more pragmatic about this in the sense that I feel like the only thing that matters is having a job and having a paycheck. I've always considered passion a luxury. I don't mean that in a rude way. I'm just saying like that's the lived experience that many people in my family had. And so for me, for example, my priority, if I was to lose my job, would be to do anything. I would work in the healthcare field again. I would work for like an engineering company. I would work for anything to stay in Connecticut. But that is something you have to determine. Like some games people tell me, and I totally respect it. They're like, well, Amir, I just can't do anything else. It makes me sick to my stomach. And I say to them, I understand. I respect you and I am validating the way that you feel. But then you have to accept the odds and the statistics of what are available for making that choice and that trade-off. And I think that's very, very personal.
You know, it's funny. I always compare it to like actors in Hollywood, right? They're not always actors. They wait tables, and there's nothing wrong with putting food on the table, like you always mentioned.
Absolutely. Let's see.
We have a question real quick from Kevin Kelly from Discord.
Oh, thank you.
Yep,
thank you, Kevin. I've been out of my career job for nearly 3 years and doing a gap job at the moment after about 17 years in my field. I still get recruiter phone calls, but when I give them my resume, they question the gap and don't represent me or not even give me an RTR. I even got rejected for a returnship program. Do I just pivot to maybe project management or QA from a web? And then the question got cut off. So Kevin, I think the gap part is unfortunate. I talk about this often, and it's kind of amazing to me that people give such a hard time about gaps these days. I think that these questions about pivoting and how stuck you are, one is a personal thing, but we already talked about that. The second thing is rather than doing it for me, I would use, if you haven't already, and I know you're a regular, I would get some validation from other coaches and other people in field about what they think. A lot of these switching and pivoting questions, I have found that people have found satisfying answers asking 4 or 5 people in our network and seeing whether people think they should rotate or keep giving that an exposure or a try. If you ask 5 people and all 5 are like, no, this is going to be a very hard one, maybe that is the signal to pivot. So I would get a few more opinions of qualified people before making a determination. And I hope you can find those from our resources. If you can't, let me know. Are there resources or comments? Any resources or comments for those of us that are middle-aged? Our resources are for everybody. In terms of comments, I can simply say as someone who is 44 years old, and it sucks because I'm coming up on it too, there is absolutely a break point, especially in the fields that many of us are employed in, like games and tech, and that starts to break basically from the time you're 40 and really gets more difficult by the time you get to 50. Those odds that I mentioned, which I've talked about before, of 5% odds of finding a games job over 12 months, roughly, they go up and up and up and up, and they come back down by the time you get to 50 and go back to 5%. I am not saying this to be discouraging. I am saying that anything that I have said about being flexible, looking at anything, being geographically flexible, having to have retooling and major changes in one's career later on in life, I am seeing an awful lot of that from people in our community, and it's just very tough. I will say, and I made a post on this, and it was very heartfelt. The greatest disappointment I have with myself over these 4 years of doing the community is that there's been many things for different demographics and groups in our community that I've been able to break with a lot of effort. One thing that I haven't been able to break to my satisfaction is finding higher employment rates for people in the middle-aged 45, 50 higher demographic. So I would simply say it's tough. I'm in that boat with you, and it just requires maximum flexibility. Daniel, do you have resources so that programmers can prepare for these different kinds of interviews, theoretical and technical interview, and so forth? Daniel, we don't have specific interview prep resources. I would say that that's actually interesting. I'm happy to consider that for a supplementary resource. For now, maybe I could ask the mods to put that on a list of things to kind of consider, and we can have a discussion within the mod team. But I would say for now, if you ask some of those interview prep people in our engineering IT tech category, what kind of things they use to prepare for those interviews, or ask in the Discord in that functional category, I think you will find some satisfactory help. And as always, if you don't find satisfactory help, you can let a mod know, or you can let me know. Let's see. Abdullah, do you have any suggestions or advice on leveraging non-games experience with respect to breaking into and establishing a career in games? And a lot of times it feels the requirement for getting a job in games is having a background in games. Abdullah, unfortunately, you are right. I mean, what I tell people is, at its core, what is the purpose of this community? The purpose of the community is to make people feel supported in substantive ways, but it is also to take anyone who comes into our community, and when they come out the other side of the door, to be in a stronger position to maximize what their chances are of getting an opportunity. But what I can't change is, I can't change attributes about a candidate that they come in the door with. I can't change someone's demographic background. I can't change how many years of experience and games experience they have. I, in many cases, can't change if they don't want to move where they live and so forth. Of these, the hardest factor, if the number one factor that gives people a built-in advantage for job seeking is their network and their personal brand, number two is their prior experience. And people who have prior games experience, particularly at quality places, simply do have a leg up. So I'm saying this because I want to depersonalize this from it being a you thing into being a very real thing that is grounded in data. In terms of non-games experience, I will give you the same playbook that I used to beat this problem. I was 38. I had 15 years of experience in BD, corporate development, and so forth. I had a grand total of 0 years experience in games. And I was applying to a role at Amazon at Prime Gaming. It wanted 10 to 15 years experience in games BD. So how did I convince them? I use what I like to call the steps approach, which I think I read in a book somewhere, which is like, how many steps am I going left or right from where I am? So I was like, okay, I can't change the fact that I don't have that adjective games, but I can convince them on everything else because I've got it. I can convince them on BD. I can convince them on deals that I've done. I can convince them on, my MBA and educational background and so forth and so on. So you do that. Then the second part of that is, now how do I convince them if I'm in the interview, right? You don't do this at the outset, the minute that you see them. But when I got a little bit of traction and I was in phone screens, you have to find an authentic approach that works for you. I wrote a separate games resume for Amazon to my actual resume. It listed everything I had done in my life to show that I cared about games. And then I gave them an annotated list of every single video game I had played in my life. It was a little bit over the top, but it felt right for the situation. So I would say convince them on everything else that's non-games that is a fit for that role, and then find something that feels the right level of passion, which could be more dialed up or more dialed down, to convince them in addition to that, you actually really care about games beyond just using buzzwords like saying passionate or whatever. Convince them with stuff you've done besides just playing video games. Great question. Joey, I have heard people say that when you get rejected from a job, you should press them more, insisting that you are the right person for the role. This goes against my gut, but is there a right way to go about this? I would absolutely not do this, Joey. I, again, will give my man, Justin, or Kira, of course, forgive me. When I say either, y'all just say my two friends. I will give my two friends an opportunity to add anything else when they want. But especially in this moment, I think recruiters and hiring managers are so inundated with candidates that I think doing something like that could be seen as very, very aggressive. I even think something like asking for feedback, you absolutely can try that. But I think if people say, no, that's it. I think, unfortunately, Joey, that's it. But what I would say is, I believe not enough people take time for introspection about every role. This might seem cheesy to you, but it's really not cheesy to me. When I apply to jobs, I take at least a little bit of time after every role that I'm rejected from, certainly if it was beyond just a submission and I had a phone screen or something. I take a minute and try to ask myself, why do I think that maybe I wasn't a fit for this opportunity? You may find that in many cases, you don't gain a great deal from going through that process, but I find once in a while you do, and that actually helps a lot. So that's my advice on that. I don't know. Do either of the two of you think that pressing more is the right move?
I wouldn't frame it like bullying the recruiter. I would look at it more or less like just being respectful and just saying, hey, please keep me in mind in the future, because I've seen a lot of those cases where we make an offer to a candidate, that candidate doesn't accept the offer, and then we go to our silver medalist or our bronze medalist and say, hey, Joey, I know that we rejected you last week. Good news, the opening is back up. I'm so glad that you reached out to me saying, hey, keep me in mind. Well, guess what? I caught you in mind, whether 1 month, 3 months, 6 months down the road. I would just frame it like that. I wouldn't say definitely bully them and let them know, like, hey, you should hire me and press them more. Yeah, I agree with Amir. I don't know. What do you think, Kara?
I agree with both of you. And as a reference, I personally turned down a job offer about 3 weeks ago, and so they probably moved on to the next person that they might have already rejected. So I 100% agree with that.
And our wonderful friend, Deb Coster. Deb, thank you for being here and being such a great friend of the community. I think the earlier you start building your network, even as early as high school, the better your chances of creating connections across a wide range of industries and job types. It only costs you time and effort. And the worst that can happen is that people ignore you. The best is you'll make connections and friends that can impact your career. I absolutely agree with Deb. I mean, look, one of the hardest things that I tell people about networking, but it's being honest, is, so if I look at my career, I have never applied to a single job where I didn't have a connection to people who are on the hiring team. I've been spending 30 years making relationships with other people in all kinds of things. Why I'm saying this is two things. One, it's unfortunately not possible to rush relationship development. It simply takes years. And any effort to rush it, whether it's hitting someone with your resume and being like, do you have any roles? Can you hold on to my resume? Can you get me a job? I always reverse the scenario. If someone sent me something like that and I don't know them from Adam or Eve, and I have thousands of people who are writing me every single week, it is very hard to do anything with that. But if you have a deep established relationship with people, there's a lot of things that they can now try to do to help. They may even have a lot of roles, of which there are many, believe me, that are not even publicly listed that you can help with. You don't have to be the ultimate blue blood insider to do that. It just takes a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of persistence. And I also think that putting yourself out there helps a lot. By the way, I need to give a shout out to Mila Grish, our wonderful mod as well, who's doing an amazing job, Mila. I'm sorry I didn't call you up before then, but you are just the bomb.com. We haven't talked enough today about personal branding. And like, I know this is also a sensitive subject, and many of you who are regulars have heard me talk about this a lot. So let me take just a minute to talk about it. Something that I tell people all the time is, imagine that there is a job that is listed and a hiring manager recruiter now wants to hire someone for that job. I always think if it was me and I was trying to get that job, how is that person going to hear about me or remember me versus everybody else that they have to think about? Okay. Well, you could make a cold application for the job. Now they might see your name and see you in the stack. You now have one chance for them to see your application, or as many times as they look at the stack. Now, maybe you have a relationship and someone writes a referral or is making a reference into the hiring manager or recruiter. Okay, now you have a few more chances because your name is going into the recruiter that way. But what if you're a lovable, annoying Persian man and you're just dumping posts into LinkedIn day and night that people can't escape? Now people are seeing your name day and night and are being refreshed of your presence. I'm being a little bit ridiculous, but what if, for example, you went from not posting on social media to posting on social media even once a week? It might be a small audience to start, but you are now, at least hypothetically, giving yourself 52 chances a year where someone can encounter your name and know who you are and remember your face. What if you're commenting on people's posts? What if you're doing anything else that gives you exposure, going places? I really, what am I trying to say? I have a very good friend, Ethan Evans, who's a dear mentor of mine, and many of you have seen at LinkedIn, who was a very respected executive at Amazon. Ethan's version of this is, he often talks about and gives this image of a hiring manager recruiter who's sitting back and looking through resumes, and they're trying to remember who they want to put in the B pile for the interview. And then all of a sudden they go, Kira, or they go, Justin, and they like remember your name. So I just think the more chances on goal you give yourself, the better. And yeah, I also want to warmly thank Wendy, wonderful Wendy, who's also helping out tonight. And gosh, Wendy, you've been with me since 2022, for God's sake. We're like keeping it real. All right, let's go back to the question. Sorry for going a little bit into that topic. Ken says, I have been struggling with trying to package what feels like my intangible skills, UX research, mixed with feeling more like a generalist. I get into a lot outside my direct field, have a lot of questions or thoughts. I've been able to reframe my perception of these from being around ASGC, but what advice would you have for someone to tackle this mindset? You know, I would... So a few things. One thing that I mentioned before, but I want to mention again is I would talk to other people in that area, of which UX is absolutely one of the ones in our community. Talking to other people in that field and what they've done to accomplish that is the absolute best thing you can do, because they will give you the best advice. But what I will say from people I've known who've been in UX research is, there are two directions that I can see that going that I think could be very interesting for you, Ken, especially in this era with more tooling and AI and so forth. I've seen a lot of UX and research people go harder into like the data side and brand what the things they know in terms of insights and being able to be dangerous in those areas. I've also seen a bunch of UX and research people go in like the project management direction and talk about how they're very good at managing all of that, because increasingly so many people, as you know, are focused on a whole range of topics around go-to-market. And so I think those skills can be very valuable. And so what I would say is, Maybe what it is you add in some of those skills and you make it just a package of capabilities. So now instead of being Ken, the UX research guy, you're Ken, the person who can help with, end-to-end project management of a variety of types that relates to insights. So that's just one idea off the cuff, but there's others that we could definitely explore. We have a few responses to things. Chris Melicinos, thank you, Chris, for being here. My favorite people in the entire green world. Yarim says, I have like 15 years experience on the VFX industry, but I haven't shipped or worked on a single game. Whenever I see a job opening, it requires at least 1 to 3 games shipped. How do I even get into the industry? Yarim, I would say a few things. So one is, and I know I always say this, but it's important to me to always say it. I want to validate that what you're saying is real and it's not personal and it's not particular to you. Now, how do we crack it? One of the things that I think could help you a lot is keep in mind that we have an industry that is changing significantly in terms of employment. Remember earlier when I was talking about the total number of jobs in the industry? It used to be when I first met Wendy and Justin and my first OG friends, and we were rolling up the community 3-4 years ago before the pleasure of knowing Kira and Mila. I would find that over half of the open roles in the industry were in AAA. Now, 30% of the roles of the industry are in AAA. 50 to 60% are in mid-sized games or other industry players, and 10, 15, 20%, depending upon the quarter, are in external development and contracting. Teams are moving towards smaller structures of 10, 20, 30 people nucleus, accompanied by these XDev and other roles. And my observation is, as that's happening, sure, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to hold out those credentials, but I think, and I could be wrong, I think that type of thinking is going to become more antiquated because you're going to simply have fewer people who even ship AAA titles. And eventually it's going to be people doing project work. So one way I've seen people wedge that really well is going hard at the XDev stuff, going to the keywords of the world, the virtuouses of the world, and being like, you know what, I will just work on these projects to get reps and in fact get shipped games and break that problem. So that's one idea that might help. Daniel Corzo says, do you have any opinions on using the green open to work banner? Some say it's efficient, others say it signals desperation and low value. Daniel, this is not a question where you will, of course, as you know, get a definitive answer. I will give you my best data-informed answer of what I think the right move is, and I will invite my friends to offer a contrasting opinion if they like. I think open to work is there because you are looking for work. I think there are some things that will happen if you put up that banner that are not great. Some people initially get spammed by junk. You have to watch out for junk. You have to watch out for scams. You have to watch out for all of these things. That's very real. But maybe it's just me. And maybe it's because I spend every minute of my life that's not with my family or my day job or thinking about Nintendo, looking at people on LinkedIn. I see open to work banners day and night. And I see them from some of the most distinguished and accomplished people in the video game and other industries. So my point of view is it helps. I think there are also other logistical reasons to have it on, because for people on the recruiting side, it can make them easier to target and to find you and to help you. But I will lastly say, for me, I appreciate it because when I'm going through 100 profiles or even 1,000 profiles, the green helps me immediately realize that someone is looking for work. So here's one little example, very, very small example. I go through when I have a little bit of free time, and even aside from Amir likes me, I will drop comments on people who are looking for work or give them a like to boost their visibility. I don't have time to go through every single profile. So unless you have the green open to work banner on, or I literally read in the first 3 sentences of your post in the header that you were looking for work, I will not see your profile and it will lower your visibility. Justin and Kira.
I feel like I answer this question a lot, but I mean, here's the honest to God's truth. It's not the green banner that's important. Is when you turn on that I'm open to work, you make sure that that toggle button is on. So when I go into LinkedIn Recruiter, which is the recruiter's tool to find people, when that button is turned on, then I'll have a special section of everyone who's open to work. That's the most important thing. Because you can actually, when you toggle that button on, you can actually have it listed, show the green banner, don't show a green banner, or have a custom banner, which I've seen people do custom banners too as well. So I for me, it's not necessarily do I wear the green banner or not. It's just making sure that once you got that riff, once you're laid off, make sure you toggle that button on. That's the important thing.
I agree. I mean, I even have the green banner on myself. And I don't think it signals desperation. I don't feel like I'm desperate. I'm not out here like every day like I need a job every single day. But I have that banner on. If someone sees it, that's great. They know that I'm there, available, along with anyone else who has that banner.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I have never seen a green banner once in my life and think that it signals someone as desperation or low value. I don't think anyone who's a job seeker or been laid off is a desperate or a low value person. And in fact, the suggestion that someone would think that, I find it borderline offensive. I really do. Chris Melicinos, thanks. Just popping into here from the best. No, you're the best, man. You're the best. All right, Yareem, I would ask Deb's responding to Yareem. Let me read this because Deb always says good stuff. I would ask, what if you shipped, can you show that you've worked on a product, film, animations, etc., that is shipped or published, something game adjacent? Prove your skills, because depending upon your specialty, it can be transferable to games. That's absolutely right. I've seen people who've done very large projects, in fact, have some success with showing some of those finished projects. Let's see here. Thank you, Mila. Jai asks, what recommendations would you have for people who are early in their career trying to get a start in game development? Jai, I think about early career people a lot. The odds are very tough, but then different people have different approaches. I would never tell an early career person to ever give up on looking for games. What I would say is, I believe at this point that the odds are so I'm just being honest. I try to be very gentle, but a very candid person. I believe the odds in early career are so tough that I think early career people have to adopt two mindsets. One of those mindsets may be difficult or impossible for someone to do if they happen to be in school or in their professional development based upon what I'm about to say right now. The first one is, I think you have to have an attitude that maybe like me, I always like to, this is a little bit of dark humor, that if you can beat 17 years of the time it takes you to break into games, you did it faster than I did. But I think you need to have an Amir mindset that I'm going to break into games eventually. I don't know what eventually is, but that is my goal. Those stats that I quote everybody all the time about the 5%, keep in mind that is over 1 year. Those odds are not linear. Those odds get a lot better the longer and longer that you're looking. This is for obvious reasons. Part of it, as I mentioned, is that things like networking yield a lot more fruit when you do them for a very, very long time. So my recommendation is find any jobs you can that are going to build skills and talents that you have that can be applicable to the type of work you want to do. And then the second thing would be, never stop applying to games jobs. I always tell people the moment that you get a job, day 2, you can start applying to games roles and continue working at that goal as long as you're smart about it. And the last thing that I'll say is, per the question that was asked early about curriculum, I will never tell anyone not to go to a games program or any program, but I will encourage people to be very realistic about, especially if you're early career and all you have to show is your educational credentials and you don't have work experience yet, I would be very mindful about what you are paying for your education and how those skills or where you are going is setting you up or diversifying you for a range of professional outcomes when you come out of that program. Thank you.
I would like to chime in a little bit on that one.
Please, Kira.
So a few of the suggestions that I would also personally have, I am just like you. I am early in my career looking to break into games. I have a degree in games. I do not have any work experience in games. A few of the suggestions I would give is there are game jams you can do to help build up your skills, get you portfolio work, start side projects. Game jams are great for networking with people in all different kinds of disciplines. You don't have to have a degree to work in games. I do, but I know a lot of people who work in games that didn't, or they have just like general degrees, like computer science degrees or etc. I like game jams. You can do workshops, you can do boot camps. Some of them are paid. You can find a lot of them are for free. You can do tutorials. Just upskilling also helps you. You can still work your 9 to 5 or your Walmart, your retail, your gas station, anything else you have. Maybe you're a programmer somewhere else, or you do this and that as a specialty. But in the background, I would always just find ways to just boost your skills. So whenever you do get that job or that job offer, you're like, this is everything I have. This is what I've worked on in the background while I wasn't working in games.
I think that was excellent. And I also think that what Kira is saying, the wind is blowing only further in her direction. Like, look, I have 3 little boys. They're not going to be at a point of deciding what they do after high school, whatever that is, for 10 plus years. I have no idea what this is going to look like when they come out of high school. Is there going to be college? Is it going to be the same? Is it going to be certificate programs? Are they going to go to trade school? I have no preconceptions of what that is going to look like for them. And I think the more that you can actually think about what you're doing that you can show in terms of impact, the better. So I think that's very, very sound advice. Uzair says, today is my birthday. Happy birthday. And it just doesn't feel the same. Oh, I'm sorry, without a job. Trust me, birthdays are different when you're carrying that weight. It is different. You know what, Uzair? So when I was, oh God, how far back do I have to go? When I was 30, I had finished graduate school and I went to Cambridge, Massachusetts, because my wife, Jessica, at the time was finishing her PhD program. I was working for a smaller company there because the most important thing for me was being next to her. And for a variety of reasons, the company just had to make some changes and I lost my job. And for months, I was unemployed. And Jess had only a graduate stipend. And we went from having what was a very good income at the time to having $25,000 graduate stipend being in Cambridge, which is an extremely expensive city. And on top of this, back then, I don't know if this is true anymore. I imagine it's not. You had to go to the unemployment office every 2 weeks, I think. And so I used to walk all the way from Cambridge just to get some fresh air down to the unemployment office. I would then sit in the unemployment office for a long time. I would feel so overwhelmed. I would go to Dunkin' Donuts and sometimes even cry. And then I would remind myself that I still had a lot of value and that it wasn't my fault. And I started making lists of things that really meant a lot to me or would cheer me up every day. And I would make a list of them to try to lift myself up, not to trick myself, but it is just an idea that worked for me. Some were small things. Some of them were calling people that meant a lot to me. Some of them were playing games or watching things that meant a lot to me. So you know what? There's no shortcut to these things. I've done therapy before because I found it very helpful. I've had times in my life before I met my wife that I was depressed. I've had times where I've been unemployed. I've had times where I really didn't like my job and wanted to make a switch. So any emotion that anyone conveys here, I'm not just giving you the whatever, like I've had it and I understand it, but I encourage you to enjoy your birthday, enjoy life. And I know that's a lot harder if one is in true financial distress and if one has kids or other things like that. but find those things that can bring joy to your life and those people who can keep bringing joy to your life. Because it always does usually gets better. Right. Deb, templates don't really matter. I don't score on templates. I score on content on the resume. Is the most important information clearly presented? Can you find the what, how, why, and so forth? I think that is really great too. And, for that matter, I think this is helpful that Deb asked this. It is really important. It is really important to have a good resume and to have a good LinkedIn profile. But I also want to stress to people, don't get in your own head, like stressing yourself about it and fixating on it. There is some bar of having a reasonable, high quality resume and LinkedIn profile, which I might add, a lot of people don't. And that's why our community tries to help, because it's understandable, especially if you haven't had to think about it in a while. But I always say the Ronco oven, right? Set it and forget it. When you got it, set it and forget it, and like move on to the other shit, which is like brand recognition and networking, which is much more important. Aiden, bit of a random question, but what part of ASGC are you the most proud of having put together? Gosh.
That's a good question. I like that question.
I'll give you two little answers, Aiden, if you allow me to cheat a little bit. I think that the resource or thing that I'm the most proud of having put together is not actually, in a sense, any specific resource like the community coaching, although I'm extremely proud of that and grateful to everyone who contributes to it. I think it is the larger coalition of, so we have over 10,000 people. I stopped counting at some point, like McDonald's, right? But we have over 10,000 people who at some point in the community have done something to be materially helpful. This could be they've given us help with layoff information. They've submitted jobs. They're one of the hiring people who's come on the site and made a hire of someone from the community. So I would say, as proud as I am of the community itself, the number of people who have felt like they want to do something to be helpful and don't even need a credit or a name on a web page or anything, but are just doing their little thing to help. I think it is so cool that we have encouraged people to do that. And I think, in fact, it speaks to the fact that, in my opinion, the most important thing that we do actually isn't any resource at all. It is how, I think, in a substantive way, I hope, we make people feel in terms of not feeling hopeless and feeling like someone cares about them. I would say that the metric that I'm the most proud about that reflects all of this is not the job stuff and not the coaches. But when we started the community, my dream was that 1 out of 10 people would say that whether they found a job or not, ASGC was an important factor in their job search that supported them. I dreamed of having 1 in 10 people answering yes to that. Then it became 2 out of 10. Then earlier this year, it was 46%. The poll is not finished yet. I run it every 6 months, but I am proud to tell you, I believe that that number for this 6-month response is going to be about somewhere in the mid to high 50s. So now more than a majority of people who use our community say, even if they didn't find a job, that we were a material support factor for them. And that is the thing that I am absolutely the proudest of. Thomas Ladd. There's some who rarely or never post on social media, whether it be LinkedIn or Discord, due to feeling uncomfortable posting in a large social network, ecosystem, privacy, etc., which can limit them in connecting and networking. What are some suggestions to get more comfortable on social media and make connections? Thomas, this is a completely understandable feeling. My wife, who is the best person on earth, is also a very sweet and shy person. I don't think she would mind me saying that, because she is, and that's a beautiful thing to be. And she wanted to post more on LinkedIn. And I said to her, you find whatever cadence is fun for you, and you find whatever content is fun for you. And if there's a day or a time where it's not fun, don't post. And if there's a day where you don't have something that feels fun, don't post. And then I told her, forget everybody else and you just post it like you're posting it to me. And forget that it's out there and it's in the public eye, and just try to do it that way. And I'll tell you, that's what I try to do too. I will often pick a friend like Justin or Kira or Wendy or Chris Melisinos or Deb. And I'll be like, you know what? What would Chris Melisinos find amusing today if I made a post about it? And I'm like, that's what I'm going to write today. So I think the more, not to like lie to yourself, but you cannot feel like you're the person on stage that has the stage fright, and you make it a more personal thing that's fun to you. That helps. One other thing that I'll say is, everybody says this, but I think doing it, in my opinion, is actually very hard as a content creating person. Really be authentic and fun to what you want to do. You know, people often ask me, Amir, and I joke about it a lot, what's with all like the Nintendo stuff? What's with all the Sierra Online stuff? What's with all the stuff about Connecticut and your family and whatever? You know what? That's the stuff that makes me feel really happy. And so I post about it because when I feel happy, I think more often than not, that enthusiasm and joy resonates with other people. So those are a few tips to maybe get you going. Robert, what are some websites that offer non-games courses at a free or affordable price? Non-games fields like 3D design, etc. Robert, on that course resource that I showed in the resource library, we have an awful lot of courses that are generalized, and many of them, I believe, also apply to non-games. What I would suggest is please go on the course library, do an earnest search on it, promise me for like 20 minutes, and look for exactly what you're looking for, 15 minutes. If you don't find the type of content that you're looking for, please let me know and we will add it, but it should live there. The course finder should have applicability for both games and non-games. This one is more specific from Patrick. When posting dev diary updates, is it okay to use LinkedIn for updates, or is that too unprofessional? I don't think that's too unprofessional, Patrick. I think as long as there's nothing within scope that is kind of too intense. I mean, I might wonder, the only thing I might wonder is, are you at a point where you want to create a LinkedIn page for your studio or for your project and post it from that to give it a little bit more of a wrapper and identity separate from your personal brand? I would consider that. But if you don't want to do that, my general rule of thumb is, as long as you're not breaking confidentiality rules, doing anything religious, political, impersonal, or attacking someone else, I think more posting is better than less posting. So I would say, maybe gut check it if you want to test a sample of it with someone for advice or on the site or something like that. Maybe get a few more viewpoints, but that seems fine to me. Let's see here. Uzair, how do introverts network when talking to people feels intimidating? So Uzair, it is hard. You probably find this impossible to believe, but anybody on my mod team or as a friend of mine knows it's true. And I say this a lot because I want people to know it. I find that stuff terrifying. When I go to DICE or when I go to GDC or when I go to a games event, I'm not kidding you, I often take 5 or 10 minutes in my hotel room or outside walking around getting a glass of water, and I pump myself up before I go in because I often feel a little bit nervous or find it very difficult. Over the years, because I work in business development and I've worked at it a lot over 20 years, 25 years, I have gotten better at it, I think. And I try to do that in two ways. One is, as all networking should be, I try to make it about having fun with people that I want to talk to. I often will try to find an anchor person. Like when I was at GDC, I was so lucky that I ran into actually a lot of our squad, but Wendy and Andrea and everybody. But I try to find a friend that helps. But also, I remind myself why I'm there. And I think there's nothing wrong with relationship building is not transactional, at least it isn't to me. But I try to remind myself why I'm there. At the end of the day, most things are also purposeful. You're not at the event for your health. You're also there because you're trying to meet people to try to get a job. And so I think tying that back in my mind to like, I'm also on a mission here, I have also found that a helpful way of thinking about it. Let's see. Right, that's a comment, so I'll skip that.
Roger on the screen.
Thank you for games designers, developers. How do you thank you, Mila. How do you quantify results and achievements? What kind of things should go on a resume and what should be reserved for a portfolio? Roger, I am going to so we have a specific resource for portfolios for designers and developers on both the site and on the Discord. I never say anything if I'm not 100% sure. I have some thoughts on this, but I want expert people to do it. So I encourage you to please reach out to them. We have that resource. That is where you can find it. If you have any trouble getting connects from people, you can let a mod know or you can let me know. Abdullah says, besides the many resources available at ASGC, do you have any suggestions or advice for proactively looking for roles? One thing I've been trying to look us for games news of a studio is beginning work on a game. Right. So Abdullah, what I can tell you is, I don't think it is that fruitful to go like news hunting for jobs. We are at enough of a size for the community now where I believe I can confidently tell you that if a job comes onto the market, it usually gets into our system within 3 to 7 days. If ever for any reason there's a studio that persistently doesn't have roles or you observe that we didn't pick it up, let me know, and we're always looking for more. But I would say just crawling our resources, which are very comprehensive, is usually enough. I would say maybe per those individuals and orgs that I recommended, you can pick a few who are very good, like Alex Rem, just to have a second touch point if you want to make sure. But one of the things is I try to make sure that people don't have fatigue with jobs resources. Pick 2 or 3 and that should be enough. And I would really say again, maybe like the CV, where I said that my best database opinion is you do what you have to do and then you set it and forget it. Don't get into your head about like constantly looking at jobs. I get the temptation to do that, but I will again suggest to anybody that the number one reason you're going to get the number one or number 2 reasons you're going to get a job or not in respective order. Actually, I would say 3 reasons. One is your pre-existing background, which is hard to change. The second is your openness to relocation or what you're applying to. But the third one, which is the most malleable, is what you're doing in terms of branding and networking. And I see people spending a lot of time going in circles on job searching, where my data suggests that those that spend more of the time on the relationship building and then apply to a smaller number of targeted roles have a higher chance. James says, hello, James. In the current hiring climate, what are you seeing separate the chosen candidate from the runners up in the late stage loops? I consistently making it to final rounds for marketing and manager level roles, but have struggled to close the final gap. Let me think for a second, James. I want to make sure I give you a good, complete answer because I definitely have the data on it. So I would say there's 3 or 4 factors. I would say I see the biggest factor definitely is relationships. A lot of the time, I think closer relationships to people on the hiring manager or recruiting team, some of which you may know about and some of which you won't, play a big factor. The second thing that I would say is I actually see a lot of these things. Maybe this is a non-relevant for some of your roles, but location does play a factor. I've seen a lot of situations where, for example, the job is in Los Angeles. Everyone says, oh, I'll relocate, but one person is actually already in Los Angeles. I see many instances where the HM is like, well, I'll take the person who's already in Los Angeles. a lot of times there is leveling discrepancies. So one of the interesting things I've noticed since 2022 is the average seniority of actual hiring for roles has gone up by 2.5 years. So what I mean by that is an average role that would be listed for 6 years is getting someone who has 8 to 9 years experience, because so many people are fighting for roles that people are down leveling into roles that have less experience to get the job. So a lot of times someone who's down leveling might be getting the role from you because they simply have more experience. The last thing that I'll say is if you're getting that far in a loop, you still might not get feedback, but it is definitely a data-based fact that the further I see people going in processes, the higher the chance that you can ask for feedback and you'll actually get something. So I might push people a little bit harder when you get to that point. Kevin says, but game jams are pretty high pressure hackathons, huh? You know, Kevin, not always. So our team, in fact, on Discord, and I'm so proud of them, they're running a game jam right now. And what I will say is, and I will give them all the credit and they can talk about it. They looked at a lot of other game jams out there. And I did too, to try to be helpful in some of my quiet research on it. I think things vary a lot. And I think there are a lot of good jams that are not high pressure. If you want someone who can really help with that, sorry, I'm having a brain fart. Oh yeah, Tim. Tim at Seattle Indies is very, very knowledgeable about game jams. And if anyone has an open question or wants to know about some game jams that are kind of more chill, just remind me and I can send out Tim Cullings a note and he can maybe give us some ideas, but they're definitely out there.
Yeah, and can I do a quick plug? So ASGC is running their own game jam, and we specifically made it where we removed the stress, we removed the competition, we removed the high pressure to finish with a completed, polished game. And so we made this into a community game jam, a learning experience, and a networking experience. So if you ever want to look into a game jam that's not high pressure hackathons, well, here you are at the right place. Join the ASGC, which is the public sign up for one more week.
Thank you, Justin. Cheese alarm. That is a fantastic. I wish I had a cheese alarm. What should we do if our resume gets auto rejected by an AI or regex? Do you recommend refining and resubmitting? I don't. With the way systems work, anything like that generally isn't great. And even I have heard some instances of kind of getting you flagged as someone in spam or being kind of deprioritized. I say the same thing often about people hitting a company's applications in multiple places. If you see it on an ATS and you see it on LinkedIn and you see it on whatever, my suggestion is if you can, just go to the company's site, apply once to that link. Whatever happens or doesn't happen, go with it. I think re-adjudicating any of these processes or reapplying generally doesn't end well and doesn't get great outcomes. Daniel, about game jams, do you have any news regarding the ASGC game jam? I like it because it allows work over the span of months rather than cutting corners in a game developed in a weekend. Again, I will defer to Justin again. That is entirely their show. Please, Justin, you want to add a little more?
Yeah, it is over 6 months. And we specifically designed it for over 6 months because we normally traditional game jams like on Itch.io only last for a weekend or overnight. And then some of the next tier level ones last for a week or two. But we felt like 6 months was gonna be enough time for networking, learning, mentors, and coaches. And so rather than cutting corners in a development weekend, this is going to be a great opportunity for the spirit of ASGC, which is just coming together. So definitely check us out.
Great. Josh, this question is getting answered. I love, that is a nice shirt in that picture. I have a big one. I've been trying to break into any of the tech industry despite having a degree in games. Despite attempts to network and apply, nothing goes through. What are the best ways to get into anything with coding expertise? Josh, I'll suggest a few things because they might help. The first thing that I would say is I will assume that you are already looking at the ASGC jobs listing and you are filtering by the tech filter for games adjacent roles through what we have. Let me say why I'm suggesting this aside from our resources. I have also found the same way that I kind of beat the drum on the game side, that I would love to see people get off of the big names and go to smaller and mid-sized places. And I've seen good results or better results when people do that. I've similarly seen big results, which may or may not be your situation, of people coming off the big names, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Amazons, and so forth, which can be very competitive, and going to smaller and mid-sized places that come up in our listings. You know, as I mentioned, 85% of the roles that we have on our page overall are not getting looked by anybody. So I might suggest for a while also picking out more stuff that's lower in the stack that you think might be a fit. I would say beyond the career counselor that you have, please use our career counseling as well and maybe get a second opinion. It might be helpful to you to have a view of what you've been applying to and what stuff you've been having results on from our coaches and from people in our Discord to get another opinion. And if you do all the things that I've said for another few months and it's still not coming through, let me or let any of the mods know in our chat and we can talk about it and devise even other stuff, but maybe try going more to the small and the mid and seeing what happens. Kevin, you mentioned earlier that you don't recommend an AI formatted resume. Can you go into more details about why? You know, Kevin, I am certainly not the subject matter expert on this in the world. And there's a little bit of mysticism that goes about how these ATS systems work, what they like, what they don't like. It's like trying to figure out the LinkedIn algorithm, you know? But I'll tell you that some of the things I hear are that there's kind of a sweet spot. And that the sweet spot is that having words and targeted things that are interesting, but not having stuff that's AI formatted. And increasingly, you see this in a lot of systems. You even see it in things like LinkedIn, where I see increasingly sites that rank content stuff. They can give scores from 0 to 100% of how AI formatted something looks. I'm again just saying I've heard, I can't prove this, but I have heard that things that get too high of an AI score may get an element of deprioritization. So I would again say, if I was to pick, while not being 100% sure, what is the best thing to do, I would do stuff that is, you use AI to get ideas and to form it, but then put some of your own words in there. Brianna, I read an article that many companies are only, not entirely on purpose, accepting resumes that were written by the same AI program the company uses. That's very funny. Brianna, I do not believe that this is true to the best of my knowledge at scale across many employers in the industry. Are there specific situations where that could be possible? I can absolutely understand and believe that would be possible. Maybe if it's an AI company, but I can tell you this. Even with all the ATS stuff, any reputable company that I know worth its salt has people reading nearly everything that passes a very low basic quality check. So I still think having quality and personalization matters, but maybe that is not true in every instance. Canwall, I have experience in event marketing and sorry, for marketing and training. I'd love to do the same in gaming rather than tech. I attend conventions. Do you think there is value in going to the booth to try to make connections? It's interesting. For almost any other field, I would say no. But I actually think if you specifically are interested in event marketing, I actually think yes. But I think that, you know, I would use common sense about when you go and when you ask for the conversations. Maybe even better, if it's an event that has a meet to match, maybe you write them before the event and ask them if you can meet rather than just showing up. As far as the digital card versus the physical, I don't use business cards at all. I think a nice differentiated business card can be a nice little touch, but I think digital is completely fine. I think that's just a stylistic choice thing. I wouldn't say better or worse. Hi, Iron. I hope I pronounced that correctly, because it's very important to pronounce people's names correctly. Hi, Amir. For a first-time independent studio, it feels like we're caught in a chicken and egg problem. Publishers want wish list validation and demos, but building those require funding. Are there any angel groups, pre-seed, or other resources? This is something I think about all the time because that's my day job, being in BD at Tencent and thinking about what things we invest in. As you can imagine, it's particularly hard at Tencent because we typically only invest in very, very large things. And so I would say at a place for us like AAA, like you say, I would say something maybe even needs to be almost in like alpha before the company takes a serious look at it, in some cases for investment, depending upon risk and the stage that it's in. Are there people who do these types of things? There are, but I would say in terms of a notable name for me to give to you, I would say there are not many people doing that type of funding. I would say people who are picking up that type of funding. So there's a really good person that in fact, mods, do me a favor and take this down as well as an idea for us to look at. So I have a very, very good friend. I just won't say their name because I want to ask them first and make sure they're comfortable with it. But they had a studio that was trying to solve exactly these questions with some novel strategies for looking at investing and funding. I've never pre-seed taken the time to pull these type of resources into a single thing, but this comes up enough that it might be worth the time to look into it. So Iron, let me table that and let's have that be something that we can look into, and I'll come back for a good response for you. If you see a job still posted after a long time, would you resubmit? Kevin, I would again not resubmit to positions. If you submitted to a job once in the right system, it has now been considered for that role, and I wouldn't re-adjudicate for the same job. I personally have not seen that work out in situations. Let me see how we're doing for time. Okay, we still have a little bit of time. Ken says, I'm fighting a significant gap between career experience and graduating with my degree. There's so much more I should be doing. Let me see here. Ken, do me a favor. Your comment, which I want to evaluate very seriously, is very lengthy, so it's been cut off, and I can't quite tell what the question is. So write it shorter, a little bit shorter, maybe in like 3 or 4 sentences to the question, then I will try to come back to it if I can. Let's go ahead to the next one. It made me feel very uneasy when Amir posted how people are getting laid off without a hint of empathy. What's wrong with the industry? It is really tough, Daniel. I mean, what I will tell you is, and this fills my cup, there are a lot of really, 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 really great people too. And I have folders and folders and folders of people standing up for staff, standing up for others, and helping. It makes me very, very upset too. There's no two ways about it. It makes me very, very upset. And I can't make that hurt go away, but let's just say I try to challenge people and expose these things so people maybe think about it and try to do it differently next time. And if they don't, I try my damnedest with the team to be that warmth when it maybe isn't there in other places. Kevin, any accountability groups to encourage people to level up while they're looking? Kevin, that's an interesting one. You ask really nice questions, Kevin. I do not know of one off the top of my head. I mean, I'm sure they exist. I mean, I would say in some senses, our Discord for some of our chats tries to be an accountability group. But in terms of like a specific function like that, I don't know, Justin and the team, maybe that's something we could, take a look at or knock the door on. Yeah. Hi, Chris. I've been on the indie dev and game education side of experience and have been trying to break into a AA or AAA role. Have you seen anything notable that helps make the jump from indie to a studio? Oh boy, Chris. I mean, it is just very hard now with the situation that is going on now. I think there are very few roles. And while I did absolutely mean what I said earlier, that I think the gears of some of these things are changing, they're changing slowly. I would say a few things that might help are this. One is I would some people I've seen have success by going into a larger company and lateraling. That was something that really helped me when I went to Amazon, for example. I went to AWS and I was working in other parts of the business. I lateraled to Amazon Prime Gaming. I lateraled from that to working for Amazon Games Montreal. So that was how I got in. I've seen some people, again, use the XDev route of working on games in AA and AAA, and then being able to say that they have that experience and then take it over and try to go into AA or AAA. Those are a few ideas. Some people I know do work for studios in an unpaid capacity, but I, as a general point of view, don't endorse doing that in any capacity. So that's not what I would recommend. Jacob, I'm so afraid of trying to talk to Amir because I'm sorry, I'm not laughing. I'm laughing with you because he feels like he has celebrity status, and I forget that he's just a person like you and me. I'm absolutely a person just like you. I keep forgetting that around people who are famous. Jacob, I'm just a person who's just like silly and trying to help and cleaning up his kids' toys. And like, I'm definitely not a celebrity. It's inevitable that when you try to do a big project, you get some notoriety and you get visibility. But I hope anyone who's my friend or has known me from the beginning of the community can confirm to you, I'm the same person from the day they met me. And I hope I'd be the same person 10 years from now. So please don't ever feel scared talking to me. And in fact, I'll tell you that one of the things that means the most to me in my life, and that is the God's honest truth, is when I go to events or even I'm just out in the wild and people come up and say hello to me. It means a great, great deal to me. Josue says, this might be an obvious one. After all the recent PlayStation and Xbox events, how do we as an industry recover and avoid repeating those mistakes? You know, I want to say this in a delicate way because everybody has their own task, but I never like to personally or organizationally attack or hit anybody. And I try to have general lessons. So let me offer some general reflections. The general reflections are this. And I say as a wrap around all of this, no matter what I'm about to say, all I care about is that people have been cut, and I care about games workers, and it sucks, and it is heartbreaking for me. But how do I think we prevent more of that from happening? I think that we have battles on a number of fronts that we have to fight as an industry. One of those battles, which was really articulated well by Matt Ball and others, but I think he did a particularly good job of it in his big report that he does each year, is how do we win the battle for eyeballs? Especially amongst younger people, we're losing the battle on things like TikTok, on things like social media, on things that increasingly are social games that in some ways might have more challenges of monetizing or might only monetize on very specific platforms. So how do we make sure that games get visibility? A second one is there are challenges with discoverability. How do we increase discoverability or better organize games so they're saleable and discoverable by other people? The third is, I believe, as a personal point of view, games need to get shorter and less expensive so people are able to finish them and they can be sold at levels where they can move the units that will actually get them done. I think there is also a labor question of how do we square the circle of the geographic dynamic that people can work in our industry at nominal wages that are much lower in other locations that are here? And how do we get it so people can continue to hire people at Western wage rates? This is why, for example, I'm a big proponent of remote work, because if you can move people, I'm now channeling my man, Ben Cavallo, if you can move them to non-traditional locations, that might be much more feasible. I'm going to really talk about this during my keynote at Gamescom Dev, where I'll go through every single thing that's happened in the industry and what I think. And I'll make a point of trying to get a copy or video of that. So let's just say the long form is coming, but what a very thoughtful question. Daniel, what about the hidden job market, roles that never get published? You know, Daniel, it's a very, very real thing. There's a healthy number of roles out there that are not published. What I can say about it, what about it is people hire people that they have familiarity with and knowledge with, because in their mind, that de-risks hiring someone versus someone they've never worked with that they don't have familiarity with. Is it fair? In a objective sense, no, it is probably not, but it is the unfortunate reality, I believe, of work that has been true and probably will be for some time. And so this is where all that stuff around relationship building matters. if I look at my own life, and again, I'm not saying this to be discouraging. It's why, again, I encourage people to get any work, but not give up on their goals. I think to get a relationship with people where they would consider me for a hidden job in my life has taken 3 to 5 years, if not more. So I just think it takes a lot of effort and trust for you to be one of those people. Hi, Raphael. Amir, if a hiring manager promotes a job opening via a post on LinkedIn, does it hurt to send a note to the hiring manager? You know, Raphael, hurt isn't the term that I would necessarily use. What I would say is imagine, always put yourself on the other side. So imagine you're a hiring manager and you're at company X, and let's say it's a popular role. You have to imagine that that hiring manager might be getting 400 notes from people asking about that role. If you don't have a prior relationship with them, I think that it is going to be difficult to get leverage into that. With that said, if you write a polite note that has some angle or take to it that isn't just, hey, here's my resume, and you ask them, maybe you ask in a nice way that you'd love to learn more about the company, or you'd love to tell them something interesting about yourself, and you write one note and you leave it at that, I think that's fine. A way to maybe do a little bit better than that is maybe you can look at the hiring manager's posts and see if they posted the role and encourage people to reach out to them. I usually tell people that I wouldn't do something like that unless I had at least one pre-validation signal that the hiring manager is encouraging people to reach out to them, because otherwise you might just be inundating someone with tons of notes and they might even just find it annoying and they won't be able to do much for you. We are at 10:56, so I will take maybe so Justin and Kira and Mila, we only have a few more. I'm okay to try to finish. Is that okay? Do we want to maybe say no more questions?
2 more. I think we got 2 more if you want to answer
2 more.
them.
All right. I will try to finish the questions, but please, everybody, no more at this point, just so we can finish through everything.
Sure.
Miles, any advice for an older student or career transitioning person trying to differentiate themselves in early junior roles? Yes. So there's again, Miles, no easy tricks. I would just say, again, a few quick ones. We've talked about the game jams. We've talked about social events in your area, depending upon where you live. We talked about our community does, 40 events or more a year where we give away free passes. Hopefully we have one in your area where you can meet people. There are a lot of other virtual events. If you even just Google games events and go through the top 3, 4, 5 links, there's a lot of stuff that's even virtual for people to meet up. You can go on Discords that have people, including certainly not just ours, to meet other people. Just meet people, and even better, meet people in the context of doing some type of activity. Put yourself out there and just do it over and over and over and over again, and keep meeting more people and knowing them better. I think that's the best thing you can do as an early career person. Abdullah, question for Amir as well as Justin and Kira. Can it be effective or a faux pas? I always thought that was fox pas when I was little because I never heard it said aloud, to directly try to reach out to a hiring manager. Abdullah, I will, if Justin and Kira will permit me, I'll just shortcut this one as a response from me. Similar to the last answer, I would again ask what you're trying to achieve. If you're just reaching out for here's my resume, hold on to my resume, I don't believe that is a high yield activity. Is it bad? Not necessarily, but I don't think it will really accomplish a lot. I will actually add something to the last inquiry on this. What I much prefer to do is to reach out to people when they're actually not hiring at all, and just write someone who's at max 2 levels your seniority above or lower, and just ask to meet them. Just meet people in organizations not tied to a transactional outcome around a role, and just meet them. And the more people you know in an org, you need just one person in an org to put in an internal referral for you. So that's my answer to that one. Next one, please. Thank you, Ken, for rewriting this one. Fighting gap between career experience and graduating. So much more I should have been doing. Ken, don't beat you up. We've all been there. I had to spend a lot of time internally surfacing Majority, how many minutes? So I think, Ken, my policy is being honest is not harmful. If you have a gap in your resume, any reasonable, responsible hiring manager, recruiter is eventually going to seize upon that. Here's the best advice I can give for your situation. I do not say as a principle of something people have to do that people have to write cover letters. But I think when people have extenuating circumstances like this, I think a good cover letter can really help bridge this gap. But I will say, to your point of saying so much more I should have been doing, I don't want to over infer here. Don't be apologetic. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be self-deprecating. Just be polite and be matter of fact about why you have the gap, what happened, what you were doing during that time. And look, the gap is the gap. Things happen in people's lives. You're not a bad person. You didn't do anything wrong. I would be honest about it and explain it in a cover letter. Next one, please.
I think that is about it. So if you want to wrap up, Amir, thank you guys for your guys' questions.
Justin, Kira, Mila, and Wendy, I have a question for you. Why are you so awesome? I'll answer it myself because you just are. Everybody, and to anyone who potentially is watching this on recording, this was absolutely time well spent. I care about you all very, very much. We're always keep trying to find angles to do more. And I hope this was helpful to everybody. This is, again, one touch point. Our community does this stuff every day, all the time. And so we love you. I know it's very tough out there. Please tell your friends if you thought the resources were helpful. We have no angle, not doing this for notoriety. We're not doing it for money. We're doing it because we love helping people in the games industry. So thank you very, very much, everybody. And I think we'll end it there.